This video was originally recorded just 2 days into what would turn out to be the blizzard of 2021.
Sage Wanderer here, and welcome to Surviving the Times, a new series on my channel. Many of you who are fans of the channel may remember that in the early days of this channel, I had more survival videos and preparedness videos, and I talked about various products and gears and methods. I started fires, I made feather sticks, I reviewed knives and stuff like that. So I'm starting to return to that. One of the things that I've done as a as a New Year's resolution, as it were, I've decided to create even more varied content. I think that's one of the things that make me unique in the online content provider forums is that, or platforms, is that I produce a wide variety of material from my own music and art to wilderness survival, homesteading, obviously politics. I've been on the cutting edge of the Antquifa, since my Pacific Northwest days. The Ivilse Orway has been a topic of discussion a lot. I've done more physical ed and weapons training and stuff like that and hand-to-hand stuff as of recently. But in the Surviving the Time series, I want to talk about the survival philosophies that I found to be true. And I may look at some gear, but I want to talk about things that would be of interest to people who are trying to survive off-grid, people who are trying to do small livestock farming, people who are gardening. If you follow the channel during the lockdown, I did some gardening. I want to make that more part of the channel as I do that this year. And I believe that the time of planning and prepping is over, and now it's time to start practicing the art of survival. And I don't mean practice like you practice the piano before the big show. I mean, it's showtime. It's time to start practicing survival. You need to know how to heat your house with a wood stove and make a fire. You need to know how to keep your pipes from freezing when it's -6 degrees.
2 days after making this video, my pipes froze solid. I would go on to be without running water for 8 days.
I moved up here to Oklahoma. I knew it'd be a little cooler, but we're looking at this polar vortex. I'm making this video while snowed in my cabin here in central Oklahoma. And in the next 3 days, we're supposed to see sub-freezing temperature lows of -6, -7, -8 degrees. And it might probably get more like -9 or -10 out here. But I live down in a holler. That can be good and bad. It's not as windy, but sometimes the cold air can really sink in.
The actual lows would get down to -17 degrees Fahrenheit.
So I've pulled the bullhound in, and I'm keeping him. I'm splitting his time. I'm bringing him in and warming him up, and I'm bringing him in at night. And when the really bad temperature comes in, I'm gonna have to bring him in with me because all of his, because he has a heated doghouse. But I'm gonna pull out his heated doghouse and put it out in the chicken house because although chickens usually handle really cold weather, I'm feeling a little guilty, even though they have a completely enclosed metal building that they sleep in at night. And last night I shut them in, really closed the door on them and had to let them out this morning. When I went to let them out, because see, here's the thing you need to know about chickens. They're probably going to survive without heat. I'm just going to spend a little bit of money and make some heat for them from this really low temperature, just because I can't afford to replace them if they were to drop dead. But typically, as long as it's not windy.
This is what happens next.
Sage Wanderer here, and yeah, we're having a winter. So those few of you who follow me on Gab, you know that my pipes froze up on Friday. Today is Monday morning. Here in Oklahoma, it was, I'm freezing to death just standing here. Here in Oklahoma, it was 6 below zero in this part of Oklahoma this morning. I still think it's below zero right now. And like I said, it's 6 days sub-freezing temperatures, and my pipes have been frozen for 3 days now. And so luckily, I had emergency supplies on hand. I keep them on hand. But it's been a struggle. I have just enough fuel. Thankfully, the electricity is staying on. And but if the electricity goes out, I have just enough fuel to survive. And I'm honestly too cold to stand here. but I'm definitely learning that 2 is 1 and 1 is none. I teach that all the time in my preparedness speeches and talks. But I'm living it now because sometimes something turns so bad, the weather gets so intolerable, that it takes both of your preps, both your main prep and your backup prep, just to get through the event. So, freezing to death nearly in Oklahoma, completely isolated in the sticks here. But I'm toasty warm. Radar's in the house with me. He's toasty warm. The chickens are struggling. You can hear my rooster calling, but I've got them closed up in an enclosed area with a heat lamp. So hopefully they're going to survive. They seem to be doing pretty good. The main struggle is keeping their water from freezing long enough for them to get a drink. All right, we'll see you soon. And, whew. A little warmth, Lord. A little bit of warmth for the lower 48. All right. We'll see you next time. I'm freezing. And it's really important not to have too clean of a hen house. When it's really cold weather, you want to have a good amount of chicken manure under their roost. Don't clean their roost board off. In fact, just throw some straw on it. Throw some wood chips in it or something. And you want to get that composting happening right underneath their roost. And then your chickens won't die from the cold even when it gets really, really cold. Theoretically.
I think the chickens would have survived, barely. I'm glad I had a heat lamp on them.
So the toughest part about this freeze has been walking out here through the woods, because this is the pathway to where I keep my chickens. I used to keep my chickens right next to my house, but after one summer of having chickens in Texas, I realized that the flies alone should make you keep your chickens someplace else. And the smell from the chickens, it's just, it's better if they're further away from the house. I don't mind the walk, but this is quite the little pathway through the snowy woods here to get to the place I call the chicken prison. One thing about this polar vortex freeze, today is the 12th day below freezing, and I think this is the 8th day of snow cover on the ground. I don't know. I've been out of water for 9 days. But my chickens are doing pretty good. They're surviving pretty good. My chickie ladies. Where's Jonette? Where's the pretty girl at? Did she get away? I don't think they got away, because they don't get out of this chicken prison. She's in here somewhere, probably laying an egg, or in here thinking about it. So I ran this extension cord all the way here, back to the house back yonder, down the little snowy path, in here to run this heat lamp, which is this, I think, 200 watt red infrared heat lamp pointed right at their roost. And when I came in here the other night, they were over here on this side of the roost because maybe it was even too hot right here in front of that part of the roost. But they seem to have done well. But as you can see, this water jug I brought out this morning, and this water jug I brought out last night is frozen like a rock. So I'm leaving it out here because I think everything's going to thaw today. I'm hoping everything's going to thaw. There's Jonette in there laying her eggs. Sorry to disturb you, ma'am. All right. So that's kind of my chicken prison. This is their environment. I'm going to plant out here in this open kind of sunny spot here. It's going to be my chicken garden. I'm going to plant my Three Sisters garden out here specifically just to feed chickens with. I'm going to add into this central area here, I'm going to add in some rabbits along this southern exposure here, and put me some white New Zealands in here, and let the chickens clean up underneath the cages and spread the manure and live off the worms that live in the manure patches and all that stuff that happen underneath rabbit hutches. And that just gives you an idea. Oh, I know. He's saying, I'm the rooster. That's BB the rooster. All right, chickie ladies, go lay me some more eggs. Already been out here once this morning and got them, but I think Jonette's in there making another one. I'll come back and get hers too. So that is the chicken prison. Of course, this is all my property back here. I go way beyond the creek back there and on beyond those trees. And all this lumber between my two houses, I will probably... Here's where I'm going to thin first, I think, as far as getting some firewood. And as you can see, I got some logs on the ground I still haven't sawn up. And but I'm going to thin this area out in here a little bit, but still leave me the buffer to the road, which is over that way. So I'm gonna leave these cedars, let them grow up even bigger, and leave this just thick and wild between me and the road over yonder. But I'm gonna start working my way to the back here. First, getting the dead wood, but also starting to cut down and thin some of these thinner trees, like those little stubby ones there that aren't getting enough light under the canopy. I go and thin those out and yeah, make firewood out of them or fence posts or something. So that's what I got going on here in the polar vortex. But I have survived quite well. My cabin is well insulated. I've been able to burn a fire most of the time, and I have a superb electric furnace which never stopped working because I never lost AC, never lost electricity through this entire process. But today's supposed to be the day to thaw. We'll see. I'm still melting snow to flush the toilets. I hope my plumbing thaws out. We're about to find out. All right. I was talking to a friend on the phone. I was telling her that I possess information that is not really readily available on the interwebs. Because when they were putting all of the known logic of the world on the internet, they forgot to ask the old folks. And so I'm of the last generation who had access to the old people who used to live before electricity, used to live before the car. My grandmother recently died. She was 105, almost 106 years old, and when she passed away in her sleep. And so, and all the old people in my family I've spent time with, not to mention being a pastor, and during those times, you know, you christen them when they're born, you baptize them when they come of age, you know, you marry them, you are there when their kids are born, and then you bury them. And that's kind of, when you're a pastor, you intersect with people at various points in their life, but that's kind of the major points where it's kind of your gig, you know, to be there. So I've been around a lot of elderly, aging, infirm people, and they've got a lot to teach you and a lot to say. And so I learned this about the chickens, not from a book, not from the interwebs. I learned this from an old person who lived before there was electricity, who scoffed at people when they said, you don't need to put a light bulb in your chicken pen when it's cold. What do you think we did before we had electricity? You think we went out there and built them a little fire? You ever find any little chicken wood stoves for the chicken pens? Now, they may have had something like that up in Minnesota because, you know, they got chickens up there, and maybe you might need something like that. And I'm a little concerned about -6. You know, most of my information comes from Southerners, all right? But, you know, so far I've been proven correct that my chickens have been comfortable in their enclosed metal building at night with no drafts or air blowing through. It's got to have ventilation so the methane can get out. But you create and generate essentially a natural form of heat. Now, their water bowl is still frozen. That's the biggest thing I've been struggling with, is keeping my animals in water. And, you know, it's very difficult when it gets this cold because it can freeze before they can get a chance to drink it good. And so in the future, I'm going to set up, I have some solar panels that I'm not using that are just sitting back, you know, because 2 is 1 and 1 is none, which is going to be the back half of this video. 2 is 1 and 1 is none. And here's an example. But I have an extra set of solar panels that are just waiting in case the first set breaks down. And these are just for emergency power. I keep condition and keep fully charged and rotate. I have 3 12-volt deep cycle batteries that I keep all the time. One of these days, I'll give you a tour of the bunker. People don't know that Sage has a bunker, unless you know that's what I was standing on when I was doing my Evil Say Orway videos, and I was shooting the guitar, you know, fake guitar shooting. I'm standing on my bunker, if you look close in that clip. But so my solar powered bunker, I have extra solar panels. So I'm going to set up solar panels up there, and then get a little inverter or use one of the ones I already have to power a electric water fountain that is heated. Now, I'll probably do that next year. This year, I just decided I'm kind of being on the cheap, and I've only got a few hens. Next year, I'm going to expand, so I'll go ahead and probably buy that then for next year, because I'm going to get a bunch of chicks here anytime. As soon as they start showing up in the spring, I'm going to get a big old bunch of chicks, and I'll probably raise them chicks on this channel as well. I have 2 of everything. If I had to give you one example of the most important philosophical ideology besides mindset. I think mindset's the number one survival skill and tool. Is you just have to be more stubborn than your circumstance. You just have to be more determined than your adversary. You just have to be an iron will. You have to have an iron will. You have to become iron will personified. This is the character traits of the true survivors, of the old people who survived the Great Depression and World War II, and of the people who were born carrying water from the well in buckets and keeping their milk cold in spring boxes in springs, natural water springs. To keep it cool and usable, to keep their eggs and their dairy cool before refrigeration and electricity. People that remembered the first telephone, right? I think that as the world spirals out of control and as the red horse of war raises once again its ugly head, possibly, for the last time, it could be the last war, last great war. That's what every man thinks, though. The war is going to be the war that ends all war. This is the last one. Everyone's thought that. World War I wasn't World War I until World War II broke out. It was called the War to End All Wars, and then they had World War II and had to rename it. So, as the world spirals out of control, being able not to just, I got a friend, and this person, they have all the survival books, they got all the survival tools, they got all the survival stuff, but they're still in the matrix, right? They're still going to work, they're still thinking, about home loans and mortgages and all of this stuff. And to me, at this point, I think things are so far gone. I'm different. Everybody's different. And I may regret this decision because it may get hard and make it hard fast because of what the decisions I'm making. But that's okay, But I believe that you can't it's not enough to just have the stuff. You have to have the knowledge, and not just the knowledge, you have to practice it now. It's time to not just plan for survival. It's time to actually engage in a survival lifestyle. And so that's what I've done. And so many Americans are doing this now. It's going to be the new thing. It's combined with tiny homes. It's combined with people who are in the culture war, who are getting away from the blue states and blue cities, and they're moving to, Tim Pool's moved to West Virginia. Half of LA's moved to Austin. All of Joe Rogan and a bunch of characters from Blaze TV are now out of Texas, and so a lot of people are choosing rural or semi-rural living, so that you have less overhead, you have less dependent on outside sources. You can, if you have a place and you do things like small animal farming, gardening, and aquaponics, and raising fish, that and combined with hunting and trapping and all that stuff, and gardening. It's the lifestyle of the homesteader. It's the lifestyle of the sustenance farmer. Maybe you have a milk cow or a goat if you are into milk. I don't do milk. I'm a meat and veggies kind of guy, so it's all about the garden. And I'm going to build a greenhouse. I got a lot of stuff going. But back to the 2 is 1 and 1 is none. If I had to put a finer point on it, I would say that's the most important thing in prepping versus survivalism. Survivalism is about knowledge, being able to survive with less, being able to get by with less. And whereas prepping is about having the right stuff. So there's a lot of you who are preppers, but you really don't know how to survive. You have a gun, but you really don't know how to use it. Maybe you can think you can hit a tin can at 5 steps. Well, that's a good start. But what happens when, there's shots being fired and bullets are zinging past your head and you're running for your life and your heart is racing? If you haven't induced high heart rate shooting and tested yourself and learned to breathe through your adrenaline rushes, you're liable to drop that fancy new gun you got. So there's a difference in prepping and survivalism and homesteading. They're all related, and I'm going to handle all of that in the Surviving the Time series. So I have 2 hammers. If I misplace my hammer, it's not the end of the day. I just go get the other one until the other one shows up. I have 2 vehicles. If one of my vehicle quits, all I got to do is get back to the other one and I'm rolling again. Well, I have something to drive while the other one's being fixed. And if you're like, well, I don't want to pay insurance twice. Well, get the kind of insurance you can shut on and off with a phone call. 2 is 1 and 1 is none. Have 2 rifles. Have 2 main battle pistols and 2 main backups. So if one of your backup dies on you, you got a problem with it, you run out of ammo for it. Have them in different calibers, so you're not relying on a single source of ammunition. You know, it's not 2 is 1 and 1 is none. That's where you start, not where you finish. You may want to have more than 2 of everything, of certain things, for certain. I have 2 water filters, right? Ironically, I have 2 houses. I have 2 buildings. I'm working very much with Radar lately. He's been coming in the house more and more with the cold weather. And so I've been spending more time one-on-one with him, and he's just now the right age to really accelerate his training. And he's already really well trained. The first trick I'm going to show you is that he flat won't eat anything until I tell him it's okay. I can rub his nose in it. I can go, here you go, here, and he'll just go till I say the magic word, and then he'll take it. But which is a far cry from the young pup who used to knock everyone over just to get to the food bowl when they poured the food. The people I got him from, he was just obnoxious. He would knock you down and take the food. And so he's come a long ways. But now I'm to the point where I'm ready to add a second dog. I'm going to get a second flock of chickens and split up my chicken prison. I'm about to add a second source of meat by adding rabbits to my situation. I have long-term storage food, canned food, and frozen food, and I have the salt put up to salt cure the meat in the freezer if I lose electricity, because my solar panels my solar panels and batteries might run a freezer for a while, but my inverter isn't powerful enough to run it. So I'm really I've got good generation abilities, just not good inverters to create AC electrical outlets, to power electricity. I can do some small things, but not for heating or refrigerating, probably. Not without an upgrade. But, 2 is 1 and 1 is none. I do this in all aspects of life, as you can see, and I find it to be one of the most useful and steadfast and so glad I did it things. If I had to do a close second, I would say listen to that voice, listen in your head, the one that warns you. Listen to your gut that tells you, don't ignore your gut. Fine example, I was chopping wood the other day, and I had on the Kevlar knee-high boots. I had on the reinforced gloves. I was wearing the bunk cap helmet in case the tree limb fell down and hit me in the head. I was outfitted for the day, long sleeves, the whole bit. And there was some eye protection laying right there on the table, and I was leaving to go out to start chopping wood. And a voice in my head said, grab them eye protectors. And I went, nah, I don't want to have to go back. I had already closed the door. I was walking down the sidewalk by then, or the front walk. And lo and behold, first tree I got tangled up in, a branch under pressure snapped loose, and like a whip flipped out and hit me right in the eyeball. And immediately I lost the vision in my left eye. Just immediately it was just blur. I'm like, oh man, I blinded myself. And I remembered that voice saying, grab them eye protectors, you might get poked in the eye. And I vowed in that moment to never ignore that little voice, no matter how small or insignificant the urging is. When you get tuned into that voice and you have one, listen to it if it's reasonable. If it's not reasonable, it's not the right voice. See my video, I Hear Voices. Sage Wonder, I Hear Voices. You can probably find that in the search bar up there. But anyway, so follow your instincts. 2 is 1 and 1 is none. There's a difference between survivalism, prepping, and homesteading, but they're all interrelated. And if you don't have a grasp on all of these, I'm gonna see a lot of people transitioning from preppers into survivalism, just to realize that survivalism without homesteading stinks. It's really, really hard. You need homesteading to go as a form of ultimate long-term survival. Survivalism is short-term survival. You need to know how to make a fire right now to get your body core temperature back up, right? Get your blood warmed up. I'll give you an example of that. I was inner tubing the Clackamas River in just outside of Oregon City, Oregon, and I was there with my cousins took me, and they're the whole life they lived in Oregon, and I was basically a Texan, fresh back to Oregon after having lived in Oregon when I was a child, and I had my teenage daughter with me. I guess she was about 15 at the time, maybe 15, 16. And I went with my cousins, and there was some argument when we first put in. And one of the cousins was complaining and went, we should have put in on the shorter run. We got too late a run thanks to so-and-so. They slowed us up, one of my other cousins. And so it's going to be, a long trip. And the other guy was like, it's fine, it'll be fun. Well, it was just the end of summer, and if you know anything about the Pacific Northwest, you know it gets cold at night. And I found myself following this group, and we were all not knowing how much more we had to go, and we were running out of daylight. The day was going away, and here we were wet, cold in this water and inner tubes in the Pacific Northwest in late summer, early fall, and I started to think that hypothermia was a real issue. But luckily, like I always do when I inner tube or whitewater kayak or whatever, I had an emergency kit in a dry bag tied to me. So I was about to make the call to pull my daughter out of the water, make a fire, and have us all get warm, and we'd find our car in the morning, when finally, with the last little bit of daylight, we saw the takeout. And we were the last ones getting off the river. But I've not had to use that dry bag kit before, but I keep it current, and it goes with me on any water adventure. So, the thing you have to know is that survivalism is about being prepared in the moment. Prepping kind of leads to survivalism. And then homesteading is long-term survivalism, where your prepping is replaced not with preparations, but with a lifestyle where your food and your water and your sustainability and even eventually your electricity is completely provided by the homestead experience. And then you become completely independent. And only in that way will you be able to survive the times and the things that are coming. We'll see you next time on Surviving the Times.
Okay. Quit pushing me down now. Big old beast. Big old, oh my gosh, knocked me over. I'm glad that building was there. He hit me right in the solar plexus. Get back. Oh, you got the ribs. You got the ribs. You want it to melt too. This is your please melt dance. Go out there and run. Go out there and show how strong you are. Go show off.
Tired of your smack talk, double speaking slack jaw, rumor spreading do-si-do. Characters flow down, there's gonna be a showdown. This ain't my first rodeo. I ain't gonna back down, there's gonna be a smackdown. I don't care how big you are. I'm a little rusty, tattered, torn, and dusty, so I might just hit you with my car. I may be old and weak, but I'm a pissed off, vengeful freak who's gonna go down swinging, swinging. You might believe you're gonna get the best of me. You might change your mind while you're spitting out your teeth. I'm fine with dying for the things that I believe, and I know for sure I can't take no more. So get up off your bar stool, you ain't all that cool. Time for the BS to stop. Put your money where your mouth is, argument or mounces, quick before they call the cops. I might be outnumbered, but I am unencumbered from the fear of agony and death. I'm about to step to it, you know I'm gonna do it. You know you're gonna get my best. I might win or lose, but I will make a mess of you when I go down swinging, swinging. Give us fiddle music now. Now, my friend, can't we just work things out? I sure would like to just just settle down and quit running your mouth? Or do I need to set you down? You know what I'm saying?